Right. Right, so this video is about why the Trump tax cuts have actually increased real GDP growth in the United States, as opposed to Obama's economic policies. So from 2009 to 2015, and the economy for the most part has had strong, stable GDP growth, with the exception of 2009, which was a recession. But anyway, through 2010 and 2015, the economy was stimulated artificially through quantitative easing and quantitative easing and low interest rates. And so because of this, GDP growth was very strong because of this. But at the end of 2015, real GDP growth plummeted, as we see in 2016. The Federal Reserve stopped quantitative easing and they began hiking interest rates at the end of 2015. So that's why in 2016, real GDP growth was reduced to 1.6% because there was nothing but Obama's tax policies, which somewhat stimulated the economy, but actually no, it was just a free market being kicked down by the high corporate tax rate. So yeah, we have 1.6% real GDP growth in the only Obama year without quantitative easing. But fast forward to 2017 and 18 with Trump, we have increase in real GDP growth, 2.2% and 2.9%. And in 2019, the first quarter has yielded 3.2% rate of real GDP growth. So why is this? Obviously, in 2017 we had deregulation, which stimulated the economy. But in 2018, the GOP tax plan and Jobs Act was taken into effect. And so we've had 2.9% real GDP growth, which was the highest we've had in a long time. And again, even though the world is going through trade war with China, world economic slowdown, and Brexit fears in Europe, the US has stayed strong with a 2.9% real GDP growth. Now another critique I hear of the Trump tax cuts is that it has costed the economy $1.5 trillion. But this is incorrect because it's actually all you have to do is go on Wikipedia to find this out. It's actually costed $1.5 trillion over the space of 10 years. And so every year that's $150 billion, which is the equivalent to only 0.75 real GDP as a percentage. So so if the economy was to increase by 0.75% every year in GDP growth increase, then yeah, what you would see is that the GDP growth offsets the tax cuts cost. The reason for this is that when an economy grows, it's okay if the national debt grows. If the national debt increases, then that means the economy, when the national debt increases, the economy, when the economy grows, it's okay if the national debt increases, because the economy is big enough to pay off the bigger debt. So as it says here in the first paragraph, GDP growth increase produces $1.9 trillion, and that offsets and even provides a surplus to the $1.5 trillion of tax cuts. And this $1.5 trillion of cost is actually offset by the increased taxes of revenue, which is brought in because of the GDP growth, allowing tax revenue to increase because of bigger economic stimulus. So the actual cost without taking in debt is an extra $1 trillion over the space of the next 10 years. But when you have $1.9 trillion being added in the form of increased tolerated national debt, you have what seems to be a surplus of $0.9 trillion of revenue because of the Trump tax cuts. So ultimately, to summarize the whole video, the economy has been made stronger than it has ever been before because of the Trump tax cuts, and the Trump tax cuts don't cost anything because the cost of the Trump tax cuts allow the government to take in more debt because of higher GDP growth. So yeah, that's it.